Well, we're down here in the basement on Christmas morning, and you can see the big red heater, big 4,000 watt big red heater blowing away here now. Judging by the water, the water mark there on the corner of the washing machine. We had about 2 inches of water here in the basement. I showed you that the other day, but it's now considerably dried out. We had it drained out here about a day and a half ago, and then I came down here on Christmas Eve morning and fired up the big red heater, and then a fan down there at the end, which you can see. And I'll run this heater down here another 3 days, and then I'll probably leave the fan on for another week or so after that. But it's considerably drier than it was even yesterday. So Merry Christmas, huh? I hooked this up to, I have a dryer pigtail, and that's the 30 amp dryer outlet, and then I run it to a 20 amp plug. It's a 240 system, so 20 amp plug, and observing proper polarity with the wires coming in from above and then through the pigtail, and matching the polarity on the wires in the heater. You can sort of jury rig this thing to run, and it runs quite safely. I've used this off and on, gosh, now since, well, it has to be almost 13 years or more now. So, little life here on Alum Creek. And here's our trusty patent. It's trusty as long as you run it on low, otherwise it overheats and turns itself off. So that's my adventure here. I'm going to go scamper off to church here now on Christmas morning. Well, here it is about noon on Christmas Day, and I thought I'd show you how the waters come back up here. They let the thing get back up to, clear across the creek and up to the bottom of that little pump house over there. They let that happen well, all day yesterday, and so it had to have started the evening of the morning of yesterday morning, and it's been up that high then ever since. We've had giant trees going down in the center line with the main current. We've had logs, creek gators. Somebody called them creek gators. One of them was an entire, we're talking about an 80-foot tall walnut tree going downstream branches first. So that's what we're facing now. Of course, the ducks and the geese are loving it. They sort of, they'll actually sort of go upstream, fly upstream, and then they'll float down, and then they'll fly upstream, and then they'll float back down real fast. So, haven't seen any deer this morning. Our deer were around yesterday, but didn't get out to video them. It's 21 right now, and supposedly this camera won't work when it's below 32 Fahrenheit. So I think I'm going to go inside and I'm going to tell you some more stuff. All right. Well, we're back inside now. And it's about 1:10 right now in the afternoon. I'm sorry. It's about 13 plus 5. It's about 1810 Zulu time on Christmas, 2013. As I said, I went to church last night, and interestingly enough, that's a fairly elaborate service. We have we have all the candles, and we didn't have the incense last night. Two crucifers. The choir processes. Everybody's all dressed up. We had 4 clergy people up there on the platform, thereby dispensing with the need for any lay help in terms of reading. So I got to sit back and enjoy the show. We had we had about, gosh, I'd say we probably had about 60 people. We actually had fewer people there than sometimes we get on a standard Sunday service, and I was surprised. Now, of course, it's night, and it was very cold out last night. It was around 12 degrees, and a number of people are out of town. And quite frankly, we've had a number of people die this year, so that's thinned the ranks a bit. I guess plus the thing kind of looked emptier than it probably was because everybody sits in the back. I sit in the 4th row. And I'm not quite the closest to the front, but only lacking by 1 or 2, and that's on the other side of the aisle. But it's like everybody's read the thing about being in a plane crash. That you're safest in the back of the aircraft. Maybe that's the way they feel about coming to church. They're all in the back of the church. And Charles always says nobody wants to sit in the splash zone. He calls the front 4 or 5 rows the splash zone. I guess in an analogy to like one of these Shamu shows, aquarium shows. So it went very well. I mean, one of the great things about the Christmas Eve service is you get to sing a lot. I mean, you get to sing a lot. And you generally get to sing stuff that you're familiar with and isn't this dissonant, syncopated nonsense that was written sometime after the mid-20th century. So that's good. And so by the time I got out of there at 12:15, this is from 10:30 to 12:15. You're pretty well sung out, And then, of course, got home, and then you're all excited, you're all sort of up. So I didn't get sort of my head down to about 1:30 this morning, and then I was up at 5:30 again to. Just because I just couldn't stay asleep. Went up to the service this morning. Now the Christmas morning service has had a checkered history over the years at St. Peter's. Well, the now coming up on 19 years I've been going to St. Peter's, and You've had anywhere from 20 people to 5 or 6 people, or even fewer. And last year we had about 20 people. And the year before that maybe 10. And now this year we were down to 5 people plus the 2 clergy, plus Charles and Deacon Roseanne. Makes it very intimate. So, in any case, Charles last night talked about some problems well, not problems with Greek translation, but what the Greek actually implied that some of the current translations don't quite capture. He was basing this on on his own knowledge of Greek, obviously, and also on a commentary he had read by a fellow whose name escapes me right now. I couldn't quite find the exact Greek quote that he gave us last night, and again this morning. Again to me this morning in a private conversation. I can't find it in my Greek New Testament, and I think the problem is I only have the one Greek New Testament, and it's the Textus Receptus. It's called the Textus Receptus version of the Greek New Testament, and it's the one upon which the Authorized Version translation was made. The one Erasmus came out with in 1516, the one Tyndale used. I don't have the newer, sort of more textually integrated Newland Ayland texts, or the Byzantine text, or the majority text. Those are all versions of the Greek New Testament. The Newland Ayland's actually been sort of composited together based on philological research starting from the late 19th century onwards. And actually, they've come out with a couple of versions of that, I think. But in any case, this whole thing got started because they read the NRSV in church, and most of the time it's not as pretty as the Authorized Version, but it's I think certainly for 21st century audiences it's a bit clearer in terms of usage, perhaps a bit clearer in terms of syntax. But it's certainly not as pretty in some areas. And I'll tell you, the one area where it is absolutely not beautiful at all, is in Luke 2. Particularly the first 20 verses. It's really a deliberate act of cultural vandalism, as far as I'm concerned. They've taken something beautiful and made it ugly, and unfortunately, I think they made it ugly deliberately because they had some sort of this was an agenda-driven, politically correct act. It was sort of like bombing the Abbey at Monte Cassino. Or it would be like bombing any cathedral. I mean, it's an act of cultural vandalism. It closely approximates a war crime. It's the cultural crime equivalent of a war crime. Perhaps not the entire thing, but that particular chapter is horrible. Well, anyway, so. Charles and I got talking some more about this morning, and he made a point about they translate men collectively into people and humankind and all, and actually the NRSV follows a convention. The antipro roots, they generally tend to translate collectively. Humankind, instead of rendering it mankind, they say humankind. Okay. And then anything that's got like a homo or homo root, that's specifically refers to man, or andro, any andro root refers specifically to men. Those last two, well, the andro doesn't apply here, but he was saying that there's a homo word in one of these things he was quoting, and I couldn't find it in the Textus Receptus. So maybe he'll get back to me on that. But the one thing I noticed is that in 2:14 it renders the AV renders it peace, goodwill toward men, and the NRSV people render it among those whom he favors. Well, you go back and you look, and it's it has an anthropo root, okay, and then they have a word eudokia, and that implies favoritism or goodwill. In other words, people you particularly like. In other words, they're allowing eudokia to modify the anthropo word, such that and they render it collectively following their convention. So people, toward whom he favors. So I see why they did that. I don't think it's nearly as beautiful as the AV. Charles made this point, and he said that this text, when it was written, probably around 70 A.D., Luke, was written primarily to be read in what was still sort of a synagogue setting toward. That would include a lot of Gentiles went to the synagogue because they were interested in. They were interested in all sorts of gods. The Greeks were interested in all sorts of gods, but there were a number of Greek, Gentiles that were Greek-speaking Gentiles that were predisposed toward becoming interested in the Hebrew God and the Jewish God, the one true God, and. So, by Charles was saying that well, this other guy was also saying apparently that perhaps it was rendered the way it was rendered because it implied that we're all sort of the favored ones here, guys, and nudge, nudge, even though you're not Jewish, you're sort of with us, nudge, nudge. And in any case, the earlier in verse 10, the good news is sent to all people, the Lao, and that's all people, and not just the demos, which is a particular political entity or an organized political people. And it certainly wasn't sent to the ethnos, and the ethnos is an actual tribe, specifically a non-Jewish tribe. That's often rendered Gentile in the Pauline letters. In any case, the good news, the evangelion, was sent to the people, all the people, and not just to the demos, and not to an ethnos either. At least the Gentiles hadn't been singled out just yet. The difference between demos, sort of an organized political entity, and an ethne, or ethnos rather, can be seen going on over in the Mideast and in Africa today. You've got an ethnos, a tribe, that doesn't want to be part of a particular demos. This thing in South Sudan right now is a perfect case in point. And for that matter, Afghanistan with the Pashtuns versus the Hazari or Hazari, and then you've got the folks up in the Uzbeks up in the northern part. it's you know, a lot of this history is just Back to the Future stuff, isn't it? Are we doomed to repeat it forever? Well, not if we truly accept the good news, is it? Are we? Particularly when it's incarnate and walks among you, offering you a perfect visual aid on how to behave, how to draw closer to God. Well, I'm gonna wind this up right about now, because I think to piss and moan about Skype after all this would be pretty bad of me. So I'm going to wish you all a Merry Christmas, and probably talk to you again tomorrow or day after tomorrow. Alrighty now. Bye-bye, YouTubers. There it is. It's like a little tableau, a computer and a glass of diluted wine. Bye-bye now.
And Andy kept yelling that he went to hell and that's what went wrong, and they were not stuck down there. He said, because I do not want my baby raised by a bunch of damn foreigners.
You know, it's funny.
Buenos Aires or somewhere like that.
My neighbors next door, I had two girls that live next door, and they're both military police officers. And it's funny because the one neighbor girl, her boyfriend, we got to talking the other day, and her boyfriend lived on Steeman Road in Pickerington, Ohio.
Really?
Yeah, matter of fact, his parents still live there, so it's like, well, that's a small world. I used to live on that road too.
Maybe they're the ones that bought your house, your mom and dad's house.
No, they live more towards the Pickerington side of town.
Oh, so they'd be to the east.
To the west.
To the west, where your parents were.
Yeah, yeah.
We're making a YouTube video here of this Skype interaction between Eddie and Paul and myself.
Hello, YouTube.
It was a real problem.
Yes, and get it set up.
Well, I was going to say problem it was to get the Skype to work, but it turned out all I needed was to install the new update, and all is well now. So there we are.
Well, good.